Okay, so now we are in the final session of the day. For those who don't know Prof Bitange Ndemo, I'd be very surprised if certainly in Kenya people will know who he is. But he's many things, including associate professor at the University of Nairobi on things to do with entrepreneurship, and also on a government task force for all things related to emerging technologies such as blockchain and artificial intelligence. So Prof Ndemo, if I could ask you to switch on your video. Fantastic. How are you?
I think I'm fine.
Excellent. I think the last time you and I met, I had attempted to take a British Airways flight back from London to Nairobi. That flight had to turn back to London, and then a few hours later I finally got on an airplane, and you were at a breakfast, I think it was at the Stanley Hotel. Unfortunately, you of course can pull a crowd and talk to the crowd, even if your fellow speaker is still trying to get back into the country. So it's a pleasure to have you today. We've had a very rich morning of conversations around digital and how digital can really sort of expedite trade within Africa and with Africa. But before I hand over to you, I just want to say a couple of things that you've said in the past that really spring to my mind. Data. Without data, we can't go anywhere, right? And you've talked about the likes of Korea, you've talked about does the governor of county XYZ know how many eggs are being produced in his county? I think one of the fuels, if you like, or the fuel for technology and for it to be successful, whatever it is, artificial intelligence / machine learning, or whatever forecasting we want to do as a country or as a continent in terms of the needs of the continent, where should manufacturing be, etc. Without data, we can't go anywhere. So, and you, as I say, you've spoken about this and it's really sort of struck me. I think the other thing is that we do talk about these emerging technologies, but what do they really mean, right? And how can we have artificial intelligence in trade finance, for example, or how can we, use IoT from a production perspective really meaningfully to sort of, increase production, increase productivity, and therefore trade, right? I think the advantage of the AfCFTA is that it's bringing us the opportunity to actually up our game when it comes to production in the first place. If we're not producing goods that Africans want and need, there's no point in having the agreement, right? So with those sort of opening thoughts, I'm going to hand over to you, Prof, for your closing remarks.
Yes, I need permission to share my presentation.
Okay. Okay, you should be able to do it now.
Okay. Is that okay now?
Yeah, I think if you just put it into slideshow, it would be perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I want to thank you for asking me to speak on this topic because a lot is happening. A lot of conversations, a lot of startups working towards cross-border payment, and all this would go towards improving Africa's intra-Africa trade. So I would go through my presentation quickly, and then hopefully we can have a conversation. I think the point I want to bring here is that in spite of the problems that we have had with COVID, people losing lives, people getting sick, the economy shutting down, I think this was a blessing in disguise. I mean, there are some things which we would not have done had it not been for COVID. And I think everybody can agree that it has accelerated. We have actually reset. It's forced the world to reset and accelerate to live differently. Most of you know worked from home. Socialization was mostly through virtual networks. Shopping changed, worshiping changing, collaboration changing, and even learning. Actually, learning is the one that we started with, but we have seen everything change for everybody. I say everybody because we used to have a program at the university which we were trying to get the women who sell vegetables on the roadside to understand opportunity-based enterprises. And they used to come, some of them were not regular, but after COVID struck, they called and said, if it is a time we needed help, it was now, meaning that they were not able to sell because everybody was locked indoors and the market was not functioning. So we went there with asking them if they had smartphones. A few had smartphones. Others, we raised some old smartphones to work with. Ask them to take pictures of their supplies, send them through WhatsApp to their customers. And as we were playing through, showing them, we began to see orders coming from the customers. And they were worried that now we have the orders, we don't know how to deliver. We trained some few motorbikes to deliver these supplies to the customers. Actually, within 2 hours, we had created an e-commerce platform. And I say always that WhatsApp did more to SMEs than governments did, because they began now to work from home. The good news is that some of them now don't sell their produce on the streets. They actually link up with the customers, get the motorbikes to deliver, and completely change their lives, improving their productivity. They are able to look at after the kids and go to do other things. So what it means that this was actually a watershed moment for digital transformation of business, where we managed to create new business and revenue models. Meaning that the rules of success, whether you are a large company or a small company, have changed. I think everybody is going to be more reliant on digital models to create the new value and experience. So I began to think more about the use of digital technologies to change business models, to provide new revenue and value producing opportunities. That whether you are a micro, small enterprise, whether you are a large enterprise, digitalization is a must. And you would begin to see why that for Africa to see structural transformation in Africa, which is beginning to happen, we must embrace emerging tech. And I say this because we missed the opportunity during the first industrial revolution. This was the time of mechanization. Africa didn't get into that bandwagon, largely because what was going on was mostly slavery at the time. Then we came the second industrial revolution, mass production. Again, Africa failed to utilize it. This was about the time colonization was taking place in Africa. And now we are into the third industrial revolution. We got into the third industrial revolution. We almost missed it completely, but there are some things that happened. Much of what when this started in the 50s, Africa was fighting to get out of colonialism. But towards the end of that revolution, some things happened. I have started from the first, second, and third to show you that with our eyes open now, and the fourth industrial revolution is here, for us to participate in this revolution fully, we must begin to digitalize. This means integration of value chains, product design, new business models, and basically begin to think about innovative leadership, where we can take risk, be proactive and innovative. Then we must talk to our regulatory frameworks, regimes, to begin to tolerate mistakes, because this can be a complete block with respect to innovation and stuff. But we must look at what is it that we're going to do. There are several technologies you can see there. Some are counter, some are supporting. Cybersecurity is a major counter technology. We have artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, this I'm going to explain in much more detail. We discussed about the discussion about big data. Virtually everybody in the continent today has to be thinking about data and the future. I recall 2009 when Obama started an initiative on Open Governance Forum, and we were discussing how governments might share their data so that people have access. And we went to Brazil for the launch of this. Some African countries took it very seriously. And what happened is that Liberia, which had been in war, fighting because of mistrust, some people were selling diamond, others didn't understand how much was mined, how much was exported. I remember sitting in Brazil talking about, I think someone must validate what has been produced, what has been exported. And that simple process, which had no technology backing it, brought some trust that the people began to trust the systems for once. Then we now have other technologies which we must look at. For example, machine learning, to teach machines to be able to understand certain things, like the conversion of languages. I mean, like we call it when you get to understand, the machine gets to understand other languages and does a translation, which is called natural language processing. It is very, very key that we do for every language in Africa, because people are more confident when they use their language. And if other people are able to understand what they are communicating, it's even more impactful. Then the aspect of blockchain, which is very, very key. I'm going to speak a little more about it. And of course, the value creation Internet of Things, which we just understand that we must get into that space. The mechanism, we can talk about it. But the most outstanding one is big data, where we are beginning to see even farmers now asking, are we going to have the rain? What is the rain for? What is the patterns of rain for them to be able to plant and other things? Was it not for climate change, we can almost be precise when the rains are going to come, how much we can harvest if we had this much fertilizer and other things like that. It's going to make younger people to appreciate agriculture, because if they are able to predict output, then they can take the risk to get into agriculture, which has been sort of put on the back seat. And the average farmer in Africa now aged around 63, which means in another few years, we will not have food unless we have other incentives like data for them to understand the value of the exercises that they are doing. So I won't go through this very quickly. These are the cycles that we have seen with respect to technological changes. And I put this curve so that you begin to understand that every technology has starts with techies who understand it, then people who adopt it early. This is actually by somebody called Roger, who was trying to explain how technology diffuses in society. And it's important that we all understand it, because then we can be able to extract value from the current cycle of technology. During internet, when I say our, I'm talking about Africa and almost the rest of the world, except the United States, we were just excited about sending emails and stuff. Americans were building search engines, web browsers, that up to date, they dominate the space. We have the Googles, we have the Microsofts and stuff. It's critical that we understand. Even the British who contributed to creating the web did not actually benefit from that space. And then came mobility, I think, again, which was very disruptive. We saw America and China, which got angry with them and got into the space of mobile platforms, social media platforms. And the rest is history, because they benefited most from that, to the extent that they have grown companies that are much stronger, even more stronger than government. If you look at the 10 top in the New York Stock Exchange, they are all in the technology sector. So we need to learn from that as we shift into the other cycle of blockchain, which we're beginning to hear mixed reactions, people saying it is not true, it cannot do what it does. The same sentiments we had during internet and during mobility, but for sure, something is going to happen. Cryptography is going to be with us. Most governments are looking at what you call stable coins, which are central bank digital currencies. This tells you that something is happening. But let me contextualize into Africa what has started to happen, so that we can open our eyes and see how to take advantage of these opportunities. In Mozambique, there's a company called Empower, which is working with one of the cryptocurrencies called Cardano. Cardano provides lending to building affordable income housing, and it's working very well. In Kenya here, again, Cardano has come to disrupt the micro, small, and medium enterprises by providing credit, not with any collateral, but based on credit score. This is very critical because it's going to disrupt the sector that contributes the most in Africa. Almost more than 95% of the workforce is in MSMEs, contributes about 40% to GDP. And the disruption of that would mean completely transforming or creating what we call structural transformation in Africa. They have started in Kenya. In 2 months, they have given almost 4,000 loans. In Ghana, they have given close to 500 loans, and it's working. And the initial money they sent is what is recycling. They are not adding more resources, meaning that the people who are taking the loans are actually returning it, and it is being reused by other people, which is very critical and disruptive, especially disrupting the mainstream banking sector, which has other means of giving credit. So this is to show you that Africa is no longer what used to be called Africa, because Africa is connected to the rest of the world, and internally the terrestrial fiber optics, which you see in yellow, has covered everywhere. What this means is that trade between countries is going to be easier because connectivity has been taken care of. And if we can only improve on the last mile, then we can completely change Africa beyond the expectation of many people. So this is to show you that you can start a company in Nigeria and be able to do something in Nairobi. And this is happening because Flutterwave, one of the unicorns from Africa, is actually dealing across the continent. M-Pesa is gone across to several countries. We are going to see many more companies coming out of Africa. A report we did for OECD and AU is looking at creating a single digital market. This is what would create the growth within Africa, because if you see China took advantage of the 1.4 billion people to create the social media platforms they did. And if we take advantage of the numbers in Africa and a borderless Africa, we would completely change the mathematics of not just Africa, but the entire world. This is quickly to discuss what has happened. So far, Africa's internet economy is now at $180 billion and growing, and estimated to be close to 1 trillion by 2030. The coverage, the digital connectivity, which I said one of my concerns, is that we need to make sure that no one is left behind. The other good news is that urbanization has moved to 45% and growing. Then we need to invest more in infrastructure. Africa has got a young population that we can take advantage of to do things which other parts of the world can do. But the most important is that talent. 2019 was at 700,000. I think we have about 1 billion, almost 900,000 young people in the innovation sector. You cannot grow without innovation. And nobody teaches you that the continent would grow if we don't get to innovate. And the good thing is that God has given us all the problems, that for you to innovate, you just have to find a serious problem and solve it. And there the money comes. So we have the problems, we have the many youths. So it is for us to change the world by getting into that bandwagon. So if you look, the reason why I keep on talking about structural transformation, growth in Africa, GDP growth, actually is highest, and it is actually being facilitated by productivity improvement as a result of ICTs. We are doing better than Latin America, doing better than EU. So we need to think about this more. Intra-Africa trade has slightly improved simply because we have some illegal cross-border trade. I'm saying illegal because some other countries have not opened up their currencies, but technologies are enabling. Kenya and Ethiopia is trading. The government still has some other thinking which needs to change and improve the trade much more significantly than it has. So Africa Free Trade Area, everybody knows, 1.3 million people, a combined GDP of 2.6 trillion and growing. We can replicate what happened in China and begin to count the numbers of people that have shifted out of poverty, simply because we have created an enabling environment that the regulators will not interfere with the young people innovating, that we need to invest in infrastructure. Infrastructure is very key towards this, that we are able to cut across Africa without resistance from any of the nations. So if you see what the fintechs have done, fintechs have actually begun to drive intra-Africa trade. And we can show you a model to show that fintechs, there's a relationship in the growth of fintechs and the expansion of trade within intra-Africa, within Africa. They are enabling greater financial inclusivity because previously, like I said, if you look at what EcoBank is doing, you look at what Cardano has begun to do, and of course, driving innovation and agility. And I still have to repeat here, Africa must innovate to get to sustainable growth. Innovation is key, and we must ensure that. And they are mitigating information friction in financial supply chains through leveraging artificial intelligence, blockchain, and creating greater efficiencies. This is what is happening. I will just do this. Intra-Africa trade is going up. Employment opportunities, I think we're going to have like almost 6 million jobs created. Productivity improvement, even from the women vegetable sellers in Kenya that I said, productivity is improving. AI, blockchain is in full swing. It's being used by virtually every fintech. And with this, you begin to see that it will shift into other sectors and eventually contribute to the continent's growth. So the impact of digital disruption in society here has increased. It's because of increased channels which customers interact with business, from text, email, chat to various social media platforms. Big data is a major part of the current digital disruption and offers enormous opportunities thanks to the use of analytics. I say this in general, but some companies need to come to their realization that data must be put into use, and then we must have proper regulatory framework to avoid misuse of the same data. The proliferation of new channels such as video chat, social media platforms. I said WhatsApp did more to the people than governments did. We have seen productivity improvement in EdTech. For example, I've been teaching remotely since COVID started, agricultural technology, health tech, which in my view has been most disrupted. It's just that people have not seen what has come out of the health tech. And supply chains. We have companies here in Kenya which have streamlined supply chains, created value to the farmers, and also removed the amount of waste that we used to have. So forget about the debates around that AI is killing jobs, wages, inequality. I think there is more people who would be hired. If you are anywhere, wherever you are, just check data analytics in Africa. There are many jobs than young people looking for jobs, but people are still stuck in the old way that I am an accountant, I'll become an accountant. But even accounting has become more of an analytic activity than filling in debits and credits that we used to know. Then the last slide here is very simple. It is thank you.
Superb. Thank you, Prof Ndemo. I think a couple of things I'd like to say. Just the first thing is I think we need to get more technologists into our regulators, right? The AFCFTA, for example, I mean, we talked earlier on about an article that's been written about creating basically making the AFCFTA one big smart contract, right? So machine reading the laws and just converting this agreement so that it then becomes a lot more accessible to everybody, people who aren't lawyers and people who aren't technologists. So I think getting technologists even into the African Medicines Agency, which is the new regulator, Pan-African, but only for medicines, right? But from a healthcare perspective, and back to your point around health tech, it's really got to cross not just drugs, but diagnostics, vaccines, devices, biotech, everything. And there's no conversation today about how technology is going to speed up their role as a regulator and to, eventually sort of speed up access and affordability of healthcare to Africans. So I think we need to put in more technologies into the regulators. I think the second thing, frugal innovation. Again, I mentioned earlier that, and I don't think many people know this, but Uganda is part of a global multidisciplinary team looking at a quote unquote frugal MRI scanner, which means that today only 30% of the world's population, and in Africa, I'm sure it's going to be even lower, has access to MRI scanning. It's an expensive piece of equipment. But if we can have these multidisciplinary teams and looking at how to pare these things down to the minimum, not compromising on quality, but making sure that they're really fit for purpose for our environments, then there's a huge opportunity, huge business opportunity. So I'm very excited about things like that. I'm always talking about the fact that we need a lot more assistive technologies on the continent. We need wheelchairs that can navigate potholes and dust, and and really become a lot more accessible to people. And there's no reason why that kind of production and trade shouldn't be happening in Africa. So thank you very, very much. There was one comment around trust. You spoke about trust. We've spoken about trust a lot this morning. We talked about it in the area of sort of trade finance, and that's why you have things like letters of credit and intermediary banks. We talked about trust in the food and beverages breakout session. And I think, if the likes of blockchain bring about more transparency, then maybe that is going to help with trust. But technology alone won't do it, but it can be a contributor to it. So would you like to respond?
Yes, actually, I am one of those people who think that technology can actually bring about trust because of the things that I see on the ground. Farmers, when we did the report on AI and blockchain, we traced a watermelon from Nakuru to Nairobi, and the farmer got 50 shillings out of it, and 8 other people made some profit in between before the retail, who paid 400 shillings. Actually, some of the things here, bananas are more expensive in Nairobi than London, and yes, London imports bananas from Kenya. Yes. So that we could change the lives of people by simply dealing with the middlemen, yes, and pushing them back into the farming or into the logistics side, and completely change the economy, because we are paying so much for people who have nothing to do but just come in between. Yeah, or adding value, yes, find other, as you say, there are so many job opportunities for people in technology if they want to take them up. And tech-enabled healthcare, tech-enabled agriculture, tech-enabled financial services, and so on. So I absolutely agree. And in fact, I recall having a conversation with the CEO of the World Federation of Exchanges when she came to Nairobi, and she looked at the price of
Kenyan coffee, and I referred to Kenyan coffee many times today. And she looked at the price of it and she said, what's the point in my buying it and carrying it all the way back to London?
Because it's cheaper
yeah.
in London, yes.
Yeah. So, but yes, I also think that technology gives us an opportunity to move towards more complex goods. We've really got to move away from just producing, commodities with very little value add,
Just think about this. Africa, I said Africa, God has been great, has given us problems. Africa doesn't have doctors. You just need a few doctors in the area of radiology, for example.
Yes.
Where a technician takes the X-ray, and you have 10 doctors serving the entire Africa, because AI can help you to prescribe or to help the patient understand what is happening. So it is us now to move forward and say, we need this. We need to have even the rural places. I saw an ECG being done very far away, and the doctor is seeing it here. Then the doctor decides now this patient must get to a hospital or must get to a better equipped hospital. So we could change the whole thing. And these technologies are there. It's just that we keep on talking at conferences, and we never go to the village to market these things.
Well, no, that absolutely has to change, and I do agree. I mean, I had a conversation again a while ago about the fact that all doctors or all specialists want to live near an airport, right? I mean, and the point is that we do need to reach people. We need to make sure we have the infrastructure to be able to reach them, and I'm talking about digital infrastructure, right? If we want virtual reality, a surgeon, sitting in Singapore or London or wherever else, assisting a surgeon on the ground in Kisumu, we're going to have to make sure we have the bandwidth to do that sort of thing. But there's no reason why it can't happen. And telemedicine as well. If I want to have a cognitive behavioral therapist sitting in one country and finally giving good mental health services to people living in another country, why shouldn't that happen? I mean, it's got to be a combination of human and technology, but yes, we've got to bring technology to the fore. Okay, so I can see that we have one question here. How do you think SMEs can assist regulators and decision makers to apply some of these technologies like artificial intelligence more quickly and effortlessly? So what role do SMEs have to push their regulators or help their regulators?
Even when I was in policy, I used to apologize. I mean, after the fact, that's when the regulator sees that actually these things works. If you go to the regulator and I plan to do this, they will not allow it. We have a problem where we've been validating everything. Has it happened in the US or has it happened in England? If we went like that with M-Pesa, we will not be having this. The context are different. You start asking somebody struggling in SMEs that you need to see the regulator. They don't know whether a regulator exists. So we need to move credit score. We didn't need permission from the regulator. Only now that the regulator is saying, oh, more people are suffering from debt. But these are the consequences which leads to learning and becoming a better borrower, but I hope it doesn't stop issuing loans which are non-collateralized. This is how we're supposed to think. I mean, everything has two sides. I mean, credit is a double-edged sword. It can cut this way and that way. But we need for people to understand that for me to progress, I have to behave when I've borrowed from somebody. you can't protect them and then they learn. They wouldn't learn. They would run to government and say, help us here. I borrowed and I didn't repay. So that's how I look at it. I think we need to leave what is happening, the innovations that are happening in micro, small, and enterprises. I think the regulator needs to step aside and say, either we create a sandbox and work together, like now we have a sandbox in the Capital Markets Authority, which was used to introduce crypto into the SME sector.
And I would love for these sandboxes to be connected as well, across the continent, that is, because I think while individual countries may have their nuances, I think there's a lot of opportunity to learn from each other on the continent and more broadly South-South. Yeah.
Let me say something which is very important, which I learned, that you don't need every country to replicate what has happened. You need one or two countries to go ahead.
Yeah. And
the neighbors would say, I must do it that way. Then you have the right mindset to drive it.
Yeah.
And that's precisely what happened with the infrastructure when we said it's nonsense to put 22 countries together to negotiate on how to lay a cable, because some people didn't know what the cable will do. So when Kenya went ahead and laid the cable, everybody was talking about infrastructure. Nigeria was asking, how did you do it? We said that PPP framework, and it worked. They went towards that. Previously, we used to say, who is going to give us money? Then who will donate the money towards this? And that changed the narrative, not because they were forced to do it. It's because they saw a tiny country, Nigeria is too big, is doing it, and we can't do it ourselves. That's even Asia. It grew because even China looked at South Korea and said, how can a small country make things which we can? And then they got annoyed and started doing things. So the mindset works that way. You read the history about England and the US. With respect to innovation, they used to look and say, oh, they've made a lock, we'll make the best one.
Yes.
You have to create such friction in order for you to see faster development of Africa. So it is only donor countries that can say, oh, if we have done it in Tanzania, we must do it also in Malawi. Malawi could not even be thinking, the mindset is not ready for that.
They may not even see it as a problem, but no, yes. Absolutely. No, I think the point I guess I'm trying to make is that we also want to avoid unnecessary duplication. And I see this in science and technology where, the University of Ibadan might not know what the University of Nairobi is doing, and they might be doing similar things, but let's not duplicate things when we could be actually building off each other.
We collaborate and yes.
Yeah, so super. Look, you and I could go on talking until midnight, but I don't think Anne is going to allow us to do that. So I'd like to thank you sincerely for your time. Always a pleasure. And, I hope that afterwards, if you've not been able to attend the digital sessions this morning, I hope you're able to watch some of them, because there were some really fantastic nuggets that came out of them. But thank you again, Prof. And Anne, over to you.
All right.